One of the biggest struggles that happens for men is that after school, you typically don't develop new relationships.
Correct.
Because the number one factor for new relationships is unplanned interactions. And after school, you don't really have a lot of unplanned interactions. So you have a lot of guys who get in these silos of they have a high level of success, but they don't have other like-minded people around them that are able to either A, keep up, or B, even relate. And when they try to bring back up other people, maybe that they knew in the past, friends, etc., what they find is those guys aren't climbers. And when you try to bring someone up who's not a climber, once they fall off the mountain, they're grabbing you.
What's up, Bootstrappers? Here we are again on another episode of Bootstrapped Millionaire, and I am so excited because I got my good friend, Mr. Joe Hines, in the studio today. What's up, Joe? How you doing, man?
Doing great, man. Appreciate you having me. Always a pleasure.
Man, I'm excited to have you on Bootstrapped Millionaire, and of course, we're going to get into some great conversations today about personal branding. Obviously, your men's affluent men's program that you have and whatnot. But before we get started, to let all the bootstrappers know out there a little bit about yourself, let's to kind of give us just your 60-second pitch of who is Joe Hines.
Yeah, so essentially my name is Joseph Hines. I like to tell people I'm Rosetta Stone, and essentially what that means is I just help them better communicate who they are through clothing. But on a serious note, I essentially help high performers grow their style on the network. On the style side, I have a custom men's clothing company called Affluent. And on the network side, with my business partner, we've created a private men's community for high-performing friends called The Standard. So that's a little bit about what I do. And it's been fun. I'm blessed. I meet a lot of cool people and get to help a lot of people at the same time.
So the first time I met you, Joe, was I guess maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe longer than that. Yeah. So when we first met, obviously I met you at Suit Supply. Right. That's when you were working there.
Yeah.
And obviously you were in the style men's style, and I was trying to get styled up and all that type of stuff. But obviously your brand has grown tremendously over the past several years.
Yeah.
But why personal branding for you? First of all, how did you even get started in the men's styling business? Because I know your story started with you being in college at, was it Georgia? Georgia Southern, yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
Man, so, it's funny, and I always love telling this story. A lot of people think I've always been in men's wear. It's the complete opposite, right? Like, I was the last guy to dress up. If anything, there was always a resistance to be dressing up because I used to have uniform for school, and I would have to wear these same tired khakis, polos, Sperry's. I used to hate it. So I always was trying to do the opposite of dressing up. I was trying to wear the Sean Johns. I was trying to wear the Jabot jeans. I was wearing my brother's hand-me-downs. Like it was the complete opposite. I had the triple break denim, the tall white tees at that time. But really, when I was a kid, man, basketball was my first love, right? I was a guy who I would be in the gym, man, literally 7-8 hours a day trying to make 1,000 shots. Not shoot 1,000 shots. I was trying to make 1,000 shots. I was that mental. But my junior year going to my senior year, I ended up breaking my arm twice in the same year. Both times were a double fracture. And I'll never forget the second time I broke it, my bone came out of my arm. All my teammates ran out the gym, and I just remember walking to the nurse's office by myself, thinking like, man, this might be it for me, right? Fast forward, I end up having surgery in my arm, wake up from surgery, and I have no feeling on my left hand. Talk to the doctor about why that is, and he tells me, well, you have nerve damage. And the thing about nerve damage is they can't tell you when the feeling is going to come back. So not only am I missing all of those AAU tournaments, all of those camps I was supposed to go to my junior year, going to my senior, but now I have to come back my senior year and play with one arm, essentially, right? Because I didn't want to tell my coach. Yeah. So I'm literally playing with one arm the whole season. And now, instead of, D1, D2, I'm looking at like D3, NIA. And at that point, I'm just like, I don't even know if I want to do this. So I remember one day in particular, we had block schedule. And on my block schedules, I used to train. So I was going through my, my normal routine, of dribbling, shooting, etc. And it was so weird because as I was doing it, it just felt like work. It was the first time in my life I've ever played basketball and it felt like work. So that was the moment I knew, like, man, I think I want to do something different. So, I happened to go on a couple college visits at that time, and Georgia Southern happened to be one of them. And while we were doing a college visit with my mom, a guy by the name of Adam Hazlett, he came up to us and he said, hey, look, we're having a program. It's called Pathways to Success. It's for incoming African-American males. Would you be interested? So at the time, I'm like, man, I'm not really one of them involved guys, right? Like I ain't an SGA guy, I ain't mock trial, but I had all this extra energy. I just didn't know where to place it. So, I told him, sure, I'll apply. So I ended up applying, and about a month later, I got accepted. And when we got accepted into this program, they essentially had us come a week before school started. So, they have us come a week before school started, and they start paying us mentors, right? And the mentors that they paired us with were guys who were getting a doctoral degree, master's, or it was like their fourth year on campus. Not only that, but they were involved. These are SGA presidents. These are homecoming kings. These are guys who had their own student organizations. And on top of that, they happen to dress up, which is really weird, right? Because at that point, I'm like, are y'all in trouble? Like, did something go wrong? Why are y'all dressing up?
Right.
And one day in particular, we're all at our dining commons landroom, and, it was about 6 or 7 of them. They all walked in at one time. It was like time stopped, right? Like the lunch lady stopped serving chicken, the girls stopped talking at the table. And I became just really fascinated about what caused that response. What caused the room to tilt towards them just based on what they were wearing. And that was my freshman year of college. And ever since then, I've been in menswear. So that's really what, got me into it. And, I guess on the branding side, for me, I've always learned it's not bad to be a copycat. You just got to copy the right cat.
Right.
So when I first started, I literally just looked at the 3 or 4 biggest people in menswear at the time. And I just saw what they were doing. And, hey, they were posting pictures on Instagram. They're posting pictures of their fit. They were branding themselves. So a lot of it was just me looking at what was already there and just trying to recreate my own version of that. And that, again, that started freshman year of college when I was 18.
Wow.
Right, and I've been doing it ever since, and obviously my brand has grown alongside it.
Why is personal branding important to you, though? Or why do you think, particularly for entrepreneurs and professionals, why is personal branding important?
I think it's everything, because I think as people sometimes we forget the first rule of business. And I think one of the first rules of business is people buy from what they like.
True.
So I think you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you do not have a personal brand, because at the end of the day, people want to connect with the person behind the brand, right? And the more they're connected with you, the more they're willing to buy into you. That's why you're seeing some of the richest people that are starting to come out now are the people with personal brands. And they're not the most sophisticated. They don't know everything about business, but they have such a strong personal brand and people who relate to them so much that people are willing to buy into what they're doing, i.e. a Rock, i.e. a Conor McGregor, i.e. freaking Kylie Jenner, right? All of these people have great personal brands, and because of that, companies will pay them obscene amounts of money to attach themselves to the brand, because they realize that they have one thing that's really important, which is eyeballs, attention, and the ability to acquire new customers.
So clothing to you is just one aspect of personal branding then?
Yeah. So, I created a course called Perception Economics. And essentially what perception economics is teaching guys how to leverage image into income. And we do that through what's called the PSI method, right? I'm in Atlanta. We have a lot of potholes. Nothing's worse than driving in Atlanta and, you get that tire light, that comes on. So the idea behind PSI is to make sure that guys' pressure levels are always maintained as they're riding along in this thing called life. And essentially what PSI is, it's personal image, social media presence, and internal mindset. And I think when you're able to combine all three, you develop a very captivating personal brand.
Okay. And so the clothing, the aspect of me dressing up, right, as a male, because think about it, I mean, in the culture that we live in today, especially hip hop. Hip hop really, influences a lot of things, right? Hip hop. If you see a lot of hip hop artists, they're not dressed up. They're not in suits. They're not into high end men fashion. They're in hoodies, ball caps, and all that type of stuff, right? But when we talk about particularly what you're doing, right, with clothing, I mean, you're in nice suits, you're in joggers and all that type of stuff. Why is that important for males in particular, right? That's business males. Why is that important for me to have that type of image versus having that hip hop type image per se?
So here's what I say, right? It surprised a lot of people because I'm actually not very bullish on explicitly telling people what they should or shouldn't wear.
Okay.
What I am bullish on is having people understand what they're communicating by what they're currently wearing.
Okay.
And if they're happy with what they're communicating.
Okay.
Because I understand that clothing is built for context, means it's built for situations, it's built for environments. So there are certain situations from like a hip hop perspective where it's like, yeah, you may not want to go in a performance in East Atlanta with a suit on, singing a trap anthem.
Well,
that's
true.
That may not be germane to your audience, right? That's not going to make sense. However, I do think people have to understand on the flip side, if they're looking to go into a business meeting, if they're looking to, acquire an investor, if they're looking to speak to a certain audience, what that is going to communicate to them. Because at the end of the day, every sport has a uniform. And you have to be able to understand what your uniform is communicating. Is it communicating that you're a basketball player? Is it communicating that you're a football player? Is it communicating that you're a soccer player? Because the worst thing is when you're trying to play basketball, but you got on the soccer cleats. So it doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter what your competency level is. People are going to think you don't know how to play the sport because you aren't respecting the uniform. So that's more so kind of how I communicate.
So clothing to you is more about communication.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Absolutely, because again, in certain environments, because even too, the environment plays into the clothing. So for instance, like if I'm wearing a chinchilla fur coat in Miami, that's probably not going to make a lot of sense. But if I'm wearing it, maybe in Alaska or New York, while it's snowy, that's a different situation.
Yeah.
So again, I think the environment has such a very important factor into what the clothing even looks like and how it's being perceived and represented to the people that are seeing it.
All right, now we talked about this kind of off camera, but I wanted to bring this on the show. Take someone who's very probably don't have much of a budget, right? Many of us have been in that situation. Don't have much of a budget, but I still want to embody that presence of being professional, a good-looking guy. How can I do that, right? If I'm kind of, I'm working off a budget now, right? How can I do that?
Well, first, let's tackle the low-hanging fruit. Number one, be groomed. Nails cut. Hair clean.
Yes.
Take a shower, right? Like smell nice, right? These are very low-hanging fruit that doesn't really take a lot of income as much as it does upkeep and just effort, right? So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, honestly, as long as you can find a good tailor and you're able to go to a thrift store or a Zara or H&M, I mean, you could get something for $50-$60. Now, if you don't have $50-$60, I think that's a bigger issue because now you just need to focus on capital. Don't even focus on. You need to focus on that, right? But that would be my first recommendation. And then the second, we were kind of talking about this, just make sure you don't stay there.
Yes.
Right? And that's the issue. I think a lot of guys, they stay at H&M and Zara, and it's like, well, you're not supposed to stay there, right? I was telling you, Jim Rohn, he says the reason they make the third grade desk so small, right? Eventually you got to get out of them.
Yeah.
Right? You can't stay in those desks forever.
So what you're saying is there's different levels to the game, right? And you have to elevate to those levels. Yeah,
because even too, I think the thing that makes the least amount of sense is like, for instance, even I see this even a lot with the guys who do real estate. And it's like you have guys who are in these, trying to sell these $1 million properties, right? These $5, $10, $20 million properties, but they're in $100,000 and below fits. And my thing is like, who are you communicating to? Because the type of client who's going to be buying that property is like, how do you want to show up for him? How do you want to communicate to him? What type of client? Are you trying to attract a C-suite client? Right? Are you trying to attract the president of JP Morgan? Are you trying to attract the president of, like who are you speaking to? Right? Because a lot of times we stay so casual and we don't elevate our taste level to match the areas in life that we are trying to ascend to, or even to the products that we're trying to sell, because it's a taste thing.
Yes,
it has to be it has to be congruent.
Yeah, Robert Smith. I heard a quote. Well, someone told me of a quote. I mean, I remember meeting one of his executive guys, and he was. I met him. I think it was at a shop that was selling suits, and the guy was there. And he said that Robert Smith. Now, Robert Smith is the richest black person in the country, and he said Robert Smith told him that the reason why he dressed up is not to impress people, but to show respect. Right? Yeah. He's saying that if I come to a meeting dressed up, that's my way of showing respect to you, to the person, into that meeting. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like what they say: dressing well is a form of good manners. So don't be rude.
Yeah. And so, Yeah, that always stuck with me. And you know, in the line of business I'm in, I'm like, hey, if you're trying to sell to someone, or you're trying to convince them on what to buy from you, your presence is the perception, right? It's about perception.
And here's the issue, right? Because I think most people struggle with being able to balance two concepts at once. Because a lot of people will hear, oh, you need to be able to dress well, and they think it also now means you don't need to perform. No, you need to have performance and perception. And people try to act like you can't do both. Or they try to act that because you're able to do one, it X's out the need for the other. So an example might be, well, I don't need to dress up. I'm already doing X amount a year. I'm already closing X amount of clients. Why do I need to dress up? That's why I shouldn't dress up. Instead of understanding that, hey, yes, you're dropping 30 points a night, but you're doing it on 20 shots when you could be doing it on 10. So instead of having to try, to have this race to the top of who cares the least, right? Why not work on those areas to really be able to maximize your ability and become the best version of yourself versus trying to brag about how much you're able to do while not growing on the areas that you can't do.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's so right. Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you have someone, let's say you got a young entrepreneur out there who is interested in getting into this line of business like yourself, right? In fashion, they may be excited about fashion, maybe working in a clothing store like a suit supply or whatnot. How do you make that transition from that to where you are today? Or actually, let me say it this way: How did you make that transition from there into entrepreneurship?
Well, I think the first thing is be good where you're at. So it's like, I was there for 5-6 years. I became one of the top salesmen in the world at my company. So what you have to do is you have to be able to take the lessons where you're at and excel there. Right. And I think once you excel there, what ends up happening is you gain enough clients to where now the clients aren't just a fan of the brand, but they're a fan of you.
Yes. Right.
And once you're able to make people a fan of you, now you're able to get in a position where when you transition, they'll be able to still do business with you. But if you haven't created enough footprint of where you're at or created enough relationships with the clients of where you're at, it's going to be very hard to transition because the reality is they might not actually be a fan of you. They might really just be a fan of the company you're with, and you're just a proxy for them to make it convenient to be able to access that. So you have to be very aware about who are they actually a fan of, and why are they coming just for the product? Are they coming now because of you, the experience you're giving them, how you're putting it together, how you're communicating with, how you're making them feel? Like, these are things that I think are very, very key if you are going to try to transition in entrepreneurship, especially if you're in the clothing space now. The issue I see with a lot of guys is they try to transition to the clothing space with no clients, no prior experience. They don't want to work for a clothing company. They don't want to learn. They don't want to understand different styles. And now what ends up happening is they might have that 1 month of, okay, people might mess with them because they just started a new business. But when you go on a month 4, month 5, month 6, things start to get, really spooky.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I often say with entrepreneurs, if you're going to get into entrepreneurship, especially if you're young, you got to get a skill first, right? I mean, right? I mean, you just can't transition into entrepreneurship without a skill, right? And what you're saying is that you took the time to hone in on your skill. 5-6 years of working with clothing stores, became a top salesperson, and then you leveraged that ability to then go into entrepreneurship.
Right.
But I would imagine though, that didn't come without any struggles. Right. I mean, when you made that transition into leaving suit supply and going into entrepreneurship, did that come with any struggles?
Yeah, I mean, of course, especially because, a lot of people know is when I went full time, it was really like during COVID. So I left during COVID, which is like the worst time. You know what I mean? Because it's like, people was really inside. They didn't need clothing, so that was a little scary. But then the other side of that too is what was funny is I still did have clients who were purchasing, which also shows you, depending upon the clientele you're working with, you can't be insulated. Because some people don't care. They were like, we getting it on discount now, right? Like, So that part was interesting. But yeah, I think that was a struggle. Obviously, when you go out on business, there's different things. There's from a consistency level, right? Because people say, entrepreneurship's hard. I don't think entrepreneurship's hard or harder than working. What I do think it is, though, is it's more consistent and requires more discipline. right? Because it's like you really have to be disciplined about doing the same thing over and over again versus a job, the structure and the discipline's already there.
Yes.
Right. So, but you work way longer in a job, right? Like you might work 9 to 10 hours, but in entrepreneurship, it's not necessarily about how many hours you're working, but how focused those hours are. And if you're doing, I think, what you need to be doing, right? If you're doing what I call, income producing activities. So
One of the questions I had earlier was, why do you think sales is important? And I think you kind of mentioned it when just the monologue that we were just having, the dialogue we were just having a few minutes ago.
In order for a product to be moved, it has to be sold.
Right.
So I think at the net, at the core of it, you have to be able to learn sales. Because you can't move a product without understanding sales. Granted, there's marketing, et cetera, goes into it as well, but like you have to understand sales. And even too, when it comes to relationship, because you got to learn how to sell yourself. Even if you're not selling a product, you got to sell yourself.
So what would you recommend for somebody who's just starting out? Let's say the Joe Hines who was coming out of college, okay, so you obviously moved into sales. Was your first sales job with Men's Clothing?
No. So here's the thing. I've always sold.
Okay.
My first sales job is I had a tire cleaning business, what I started when I was a kid.
A tire cleaning business,
right? And I would literally, one of my neighbors, he would always have these huge like barbecues at his house. And of course, there'd be a lot of cars there. So every time he had a barbecue, I would go over and I would ask. I was like, "Hey man, I'm willing to clean tires. $10 for sedans. $15 for trucks."
Yeah.
And that was my first experience with sales, like being, having to go over, ask people for things, being okay with somebody telling me no, etc. Then what it later progressed into is, of course, AAU. You got to sell stuff at AAU. Basketball, right? Like raising money. Then it progressed when I got in high school. My real first sales job was I had an internship with Allstate. Never forget it. Would have to go in the morning, open the office up at like 7 a.m., which at the time was like the earliest I'd ever gotten up in my life. And it was a commission-only internship, where the only way I would be able to get commission is if I was able to get someone's information fully on this insurance sheet.
Okay.
Now, granted, she got me calling people from the Yellow Pages. So I don't know if you ever called people from Yellow Pages at 7:30, 8 a.m., but they're cussing me out. Like it was nasty work, right? They're talking to me crazy. My mom don't even talk to me like this. But I had to learn, right, how to be able to go through that. And also it was valuable too, because what I learned, and I tell people this, one day I was trying to figure out how to make more money, but I realized that after every 10 people I talked to, I got one yes. So what I started realizing, I'm like, oh shoot, okay, so for every 9 no's I get, the next one's gonna be a yes. So I started learning my numbers. And once I started learning my numbers, it got way less personal for me. Because now, instead of getting defeated on the no's, I would be like, oh, shit, okay, cool. If I want to get 10 yeses today, I need to talk to 100 people. Okay, cool. So I need to get about 90
no's.
no's.
So the no's kept getting you closer to your yes.
Yes. So I learned that yes to the destination, but no's how you get there. So again, like these are my first experiences with sales.
Say that again. I like that
So
quote.
yes is the destination, but no is how you get there.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yes is the destination, but no is how you get it.
It's a great book too. That's actually where I got it from. That was a book I read.
So there's a book called that.
Yeah, there's a book called Yes, the Destination Knows How You Get There.
Right.
But I really just started learning. But I think at the end of the day, sales is one of those things that's like karate. Right? You can read about karate all you want, but until you get kicked in the face, right? Like you got to practice it.
Yeah.
you got to be in the field, and I think you just have to also be willing to listen to the client.
Would you recommend some young person that's in high school right now, even though they're in high school, right? But would you recommend that they start doing kind of like getting some form of sales?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And here's another thing too, right? When people are like, oh my God, people getting laid off. The tighter the economy gets, the more valuable a salesperson is.
Yes.
The more that means when the economy's doing the worst, that's when you're gonna get paid the most as a salesperson, because that's when they really need you. They need good salespeople to be able to make it make sense while the economy is tight. So I think again, it's the number one skill set, because it works well when the economy's good, but it works really well when the economy's bad. So I think it absolutely is a skill set that everyone should learn.
Do you think AI is AI something that can disrupt the sales profession?
It's gonna be tough because a lot of it as well is gonna have to do, I think, with tonality. People still want to see people. I mean, I'm sure maybe one day, especially once you get into like robots, and then maybe being able to mask, people's face on the robots. Like these are things that I think will definitely be real. But as of right now, I wouldn't be as worried about it. And then at the end of the day, if AI take your job, all you got to learn is how to program the AI.
Yeah.
Or you sell the AI.
Yeah.
You sell the AI salesman.
Yeah. I personally don't think it. I don't think it would disrupt it. I think people are still going to want to. People still need the human interaction, right?
Yeah.
I think AI can help you better in sales because if you got tools like CRMs and tools that can help you do follow up and all those type of things, I personally think AI helps you to become a better salesperson, even if you're an introvert.
Yeah.
Because the tool can do a lot of the things that those mundane things you may not want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And even too, and that's another good point, right? Because some people might be saying like, "Oh, I'm an introvert. I can't be a salesman." And my counter would be is, no, you actually make a perfect salesman because an introvert's willing to listen more than they're talking, and that's one of the number one skill sets a salesman needs to have. Is you have to be willing to listen. So it's like again, it's just at the end of the day, what are you selling yourself on? Right? That's what it comes down to. What are you selling yourself on? And based on that, you're going to get different answers.
Yeah, because I was telling my nephew, he's about 19, 20 years old, and I was telling him, look, man, I mean, get into sales, right? If or learn a skill like sales. I know he was considering doing cybersecurity and things of that nature, which we're starting to see now, even with technology, that field is being downsized because a lot of technology jobs are being cut, etc.
Yeah.
But sales to me is one of those skill sets that if you learn, no one can ever take that skill away from you. And you can always go somewhere and find work because something has to be sold.
Yeah, for the economy move, it has to be sold. So again, I think it's just a very important skill set. I think everybody should learn. I think everybody should have a basic idea on how to do it because at the end of the day, again, even if you aren't selling a product, you still have to be able to sell yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's talk about the standard, right? You group the standard, right? Give us a little bit of overview of what the program is about.
Yeah, so essentially the standard is a private men's community for high performing men and friends that help men go from good to great in all areas of life, right? So, whether you're a guy who wants to grow on the physical pillar, the spiritual pillar, the emotional, the relationship, the financial, we've created an environment that helps and gives guys assistance and resources in all of those areas while simultaneously connecting other men with like-minded professionals or entrepreneurs just like themselves. I think one of the biggest struggles that happens for men is that after school, you typically don't develop new relationships.
Correct.
Because the number one factor for new relationships is unplanned interactions. And after school, you don't really have a lot of unplanned interactions. So you have a lot of guys who get in these silos of they have a high level of success, but they don't have other like-minded people around them that are able to either A, keep up, or B, even relate. And when they try to bring back up other people, maybe that they knew in the past, friends, etc., what they find is those guys aren't climbers. And when you try to bring someone up who's not a climber, once they fall off the mountain, they're grabbing you. So these guys get in these really lonely, isolated positions to where they don't feel like they have other men that can relate to them, right? That they can talk about business with, that they feel comfortable even talking numbers with without that other person getting jealous, etc.
True.
And they don't have enough time to be able to find out or vet where these guys are.
True.
So we've created an environment where, hey, don't worry about vetting this guy. We've already done it. You can come here. You can take off the kid. You can be safe because there's other men that are just like you. And even from a further standpoint, even from a relationship, a marriage standpoint, because there's also another sector of guys where, that are high performing but are in relationships. And they don't have other men or guys that they can talk to that understand the stress of performing at a high level while still having this expectation from the wife at home of having to be there every day consistently. And they need other men where they can talk about that with, right? Because most men might not understand what it's like, working 78 hours, having to run a company, having to run payroll, etc., while still having wifey and kids at the home, still having to plan dates, etc. So I think it's also been good for those men to be able to have those healthy conversations in the group because they really can relate with each other.
Yeah, I obviously, I've helped participate in with the group. And to me, I think it's just a one-of-a-kind type of program, right? I mean, to see all those brothers together. And what I really like about the program, and maybe you can speak on this, but it's a very diverse community, right? I mean, it's just not, it's just not a group of African American brothers, but it's a very diverse group of men, which you don't see much of that nowadays.
Yeah, I think the thing that was really important for us is obviously to have that diversity there, because I think every culture, every group of people has something that they can bring to the table. And what's really beautiful and what happens is when you're able to bring people together that have different perspectives, different assets, different things that they're good at, right? You're able to share with the group. Mm-hmm. But sometimes if you only have one group of people in a certain environment or a certain space, everybody knows the same thing. Everyone has the same conversation. So you don't really grow as much. But when you really get into an environment that is diverse, that does have a community of different guys from different places, that's when you really start to have this multiplication effect. Because, wow, now you have, a guy from New York, you have a guy from California, you have a guy from Atlanta. Maybe they're, one's white, one's Asian, one's black. But they've had the same core experiences in terms of things that they've gone through in life that allow for them to connect with each other while still having different life experiences that they can add to each other to be able to grow each other collectively as a group.
Now, it's a very intimate group. Well, I wouldn't say intimate because you got about 500 guys now, right? Yeah. But you do go through a criteria in helping select what kind of men. What are you looking for in the men that become a part of the standard?
Yeah, I think for us, it's just looking for men that are well balanced and not too heavily sided on one area, right? So obviously, we want men who are financially stable, but we also want men who value legacy. We also want men who value brotherhood and community. We also want men who have a vision for their life and where they see themselves going in the next 5-10 years. So obviously we have a application, right? And then depending on if that application is approved or not, they do have a final interview as well, where we kind of ask them certain questions to get a feel for who they are. But yeah, I think being well-rounded is a really big thing for us, right? It's not just about the money. We've talked to guys who, have a lot of finances, but there's certain things and questions we ask them where, maybe from a character standpoint or just a decent human being standpoint, they said certain things that we knew didn't mesh well with the community. And for that, we didn't move forward with the application.
So the community is really like a brotherhood, right? I mean, I know you guys do a lot of events, so because I know a lot of people may be listening to this and you hear about business and all that type of stuff, but y'all have a lot of fun too now.
So again, I think as a man, it's really important to be able to balance multiple concepts at one time, right? Yes, you need to be able to talk about business, making money, but you also need to be able to be social. You need to be able to have fun. You need to be able to connect and do different things to create and make yourself a well-rounded human being. So, to your point, we're in about 10 different regions. Every region we do about 2 to 3 events per month. And those events oftentimes marry, the different pillars. So sometimes we might do a group workout, with the physical pillar. Another time we might bring in a speaker, and that'll help on the financial pillar, the mental pillar. Sometimes we even bring in relationship coach. Right now we have a premarital program that we're doing with a counselor, Mary Jo Rapini, and she's killing it, right? Other times we might have, a fashion session, right? We're working on that personal image. So there's a lot of different things we do from an event standpoint to really give guys different looks, but also allow them an opportunity to grow in different areas and connect with men on multiple different levels.
But y'all also do those big excursions.
So we do experience as well, where we travel across the world, right? We're doing Paris during the Olympics this year. We're doing Zanzibar, right? We've done Cancun. So we do that as well. So even from a traveling perspective, these are all things that we like to add in, and even like our luxury socials that we do, where we partner with different places like the Ritz-Carlton, different estate owners, etc. And we just create environments for people to be able to connect in high taste level settings, and for guys to really be able to have a place where they can go to, feel comfortable, and have some fun.
Yeah. So what are some of the benefits that you think some of the guys have gotten from the program, right? I kind of know a few. I mean, you and I've talked about some of the opportunities that some of the other men in the group have brought to the group, and guys were able to participate in on. Talk a little bit about that, because again, it's a community, and I want people to understand the fact that it's a community that where these guys are actually supporting one another.
I think it's perfect, right? I'll give you a perfect example. We got a guy named JR out in Dallas. He recently just raised $250,000 inside the community to do his project, his real estate project that he's doing in Dallas. We got a guy named Ricardo who's literally helped, I think almost 10 guys in the community get their first investment property. He's in
Wow.
the mortgage lending business. He's been, he's been crushing it there. We have guys like a Louis Mancini and a Thami who, they met each other and they ended up starting a business together and were able to get their first contract together, as business partners. So, I mean, we have a lot of stories like that of guys either, doing business deals together, guys helping each other get other jobs, guys, investing with each other. I mean, guys, getting new CPAs, i.e. Christian O, who I know you're familiar with. He's been helping a lot of guys on the tax side and the finance side, being a CPA. So that's really what it's about, right? It's about having a community of guys you can go to, a Rolodex of guys who are competent. And instead of, the money flowing outward, the money flows within the community, right? And everyone wins.
Yeah. And that's so. The event that we had in Dallas, I think just last year was such a powerful event. I know you guys this year, like you said, you got you're going to the Olympics, right? You're taking the guys
to Paris during the Olympics,
right.
And then we're going to Zanzibar. Yeah, it's going to be fun, and we'll be looking at investment properties in Zanzibar as well.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
to be able to kind of where the group can kind of invest in deals together.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. Yeah. So Joe, let me ask you. So how can people connect with you online? Now, I know you got a strong presence, but for our bootstrappers out there who would like to connect with you or like to learn more about the standard and your clothing business, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest way is just follow me on Instagram at Mr.JHines, Jhines. I have both the standard as well as a fluent tagged on my main personal page, so you'll be able to follow both just by following me on that main page. And yeah, shoot me a DM. I'm always open to talk and hopefully provide value.
Absolutely. Listen, man, it's a pleasure to have you on the Bootstrapped Millionaire show, and I'm for sure a lot of people are going to get a lot of great gems from this interview. So again, I want to personally thank you, man, for shedding a lot of insight and value to the show. And hopefully in the next coming weeks or months, man, we'd love to have you back on again so we can dive into some much even deeper things as well, to more importantly, maybe talk even more about the standard and what you guys are doing. But again, thank you for being on the show, man. And as always, as we like to say at the end of the show, keep bootstrapped.
Keep bootstrapping. Thank you, Bob.